Hello, hello. Welcome to the place for offbeat health professionals who have bravely swapped their healthcare hats for non-clinical creative caps. I'm Caitlin, a psychologist turned copywriter, and this is Healers with Hustles. Psychologists spend their time piecing together stories, right, to help clients make sense of their lives. That's pretty much in a nutshell what therapists do. And to help us do that, we have a thing called formulation, which is basically the foundation of everything we do in therapy. It's about understanding why symptoms and problems are happening in their life. So imagine if you could use that same concept or a similar approach in your business to truly deeply understand your ideal audience. Well, luckily for you, you can. You can even borrow from psychology and focus on empathy mapping. It's about getting beyond the surface level stuff and really stepping into your audience's shoes. So seeing the world as they see it. So in business, that means your messaging speaks in a way that goes deeper than saying, buy this or sign up for this. Instead, you're really showing them that you really truly get their struggles and what they're going through. But you also understand their dreams maybe, and maybe even those fears that they don't want to share. And that, my friend, is the definition of connection before conversion. So like I said before, in psychology, formulation is about uncovering what's happening for the person. So we really want to focus on like the why behind the symptom, like what's happening for that person. Empathy mapping works the same way in that it's really giving a detailed view of the presenting problem of your audience. So piecing together what your audience is thinking, feeling, saying, and doing. So you can speak to them in a way that people really listen up and they go, oh my gosh, that's exactly what's happening for me. So as an example, maybe in your business, your clients might not be getting any leads. So empathy mapping is about exploring that symptom. So the frustration they feel, maybe the actions they're taking or not taking, and the words, and really importantly, the words that they use to describe their experience so that you can meet them where they are with your messaging. All right, so what is empathy mapping? Basically, empathy mapping has four main parts. What your audience thinks, so what's going on in their head. Maybe even thoughts that they're a bit ashamed to say out loud. What they feel, of course. So the emotions that are really behind their actions. So that could be fear, excitement, worry, envy, anything. And also what they say, so the words and phrases they use to talk about their challenges. So rather than how you would frame their problem or the symptoms they're experiencing, it's exactly what they would say. So they might not think of themselves as overwhelmed. They might say that they're really just feeling stuck or directionless or something. And so it's really important to use the same words because it's really about mirroring what your audience is saying to build trust. This is where sometimes businesses lose the mark with their copy because they focus on what they as a business want to say rather than what their audience needs to hear. Because sometimes that makes copy feel a little bit soulless or a bit like a generic, I don't know, sales pitch or something like that. So potentially maybe if you're trying to help someone in your business, imagine maybe you're a business coach, right? And you're trying to help someone get leads. Maybe they're a bit overwhelmed in their business. If you skip the empathy mapping part, you might write something just like, let me help you grow your business. But if you really thought about your audience, like really thought deeply about what that is looking like in their daily life, you might realize they're not necessarily feeling overwhelmed, but they're maybe lying awake at night or they can't get to sleep or something like that. And they're just really wondering why they can't get everything together. Yeah. So maybe they're lying awake at night and thinking they're literally going through their list for the next day of all the shit they have to do to try and get leads. Maybe instead in your copy, you might write, I'll help you build a business that feels like a never-ending list of to-dos and more like that feeling when you first go on vacation or something like that. And that's the slight difference that when you use empathy mapping makes in your messaging. So it's really about what audience is thinking, but also for them to know that you really understand what they're going through. So how do you create an empathy map? You can really dive in straight into the empathy mapping, or if you want, if it helps you to kind of picture who your ideal client is to do a little bit of demographics, like who they are. If you want to put a name to them, like Sarah, maybe they're a mindset coach and they live in X, Y, or Z and they value this and maybe what their goals are. So basically then you want to divide your page in four. So you have four quadrants. One would be like what she's thinking, what she's feeling, what she's saying, and what she's doing. So maybe what thoughts, if they wake up in the middle of the night. I know this is such a boring question that the marketers love, but it's true. Like there's been many times where I've woken up in the middle of night freaking out about my business and I've like reached for my phone and Google. So what does your client read when they can't sleep at night? They might be worried about their business and they reach for their phone to quickly Google something. What do they Google? What is it? Write that down. And what emotions are they feeling? Not just overwhelmed, but you want to like think deeply about it. So what are they feeling? Really good copy doesn't stop at just naming the feeling or the emotion. It's about detailing what that looks like. You can do the movie director test where basically if your client was feeling overwhelmed during the day, what would she be doing? Would she be jumping through 1,000 browser tabs? Would she be jumping from task to task? Would she be calling her partner in a panic? What does that look like? What are they saying? So maybe what are the words that you're using about their challenges? That comes back to what they're Googling. And also the last quadrant is basically what they're doing. So what actions are they taking? Maybe what they've tried, what they haven't tried. And if you're going, I have no idea, how can I make all this up? Well, I'll do another episode that goes into a bit more detail about this. But you've got emails from clients, direct messages, or even calls. Like, what are people saying to you? So potentially maybe they're saying things like, I feel like I'm really invisible online, instead of maybe that they have low traffic, which is maybe a bit more of a jargony word. You want to take notice of that. That's really interesting. And it's a great picture as well. You might have a few different audiences, but maybe pick one for one offer as well. So think about one client for one service or one offer and you brainstorm. I know it seems like a little bit of a boring task or just another something to do, but it will really give you a richer insight into who your audience are and really helps them feel seen. And of course, when people feel seen, they pay attention, they listen, they engage, and they trust you. And we all know that know, like, and trust is so important for business. All right. That's the end of another episode. Thank you so much for tuning in to Healers with Hustles. If you've enjoyed today's episode, will you do me a tiny favor and subscribe to the show? Just tap the subscribe button on your favorite podcast platform and you'll be the first to know as soon as a new episode drops. Thanks so much for listening. Okay, ta-ta for now.